My in-person life, I've been asked multiple times now why I stopped going to a certain place that I used to go to all the time. I used to attend this like occult store every single week without fail. And I used to attend this occult store every week because that was where I met a lot of other witches in my local area. That is where I met a lot of other spiritually inclined people. That is where I met a lot of different people who could teach me different skills. For a long time, it was a place of community for me for a couple years. And I felt deeply, deeply attached to this place. There was always, however, serious issues with this place that I had. And for a long time, I brushed those issues aside because I was not going there for the people that were causing these issues. I was going there to be with my friends. And what eventually happened is that I could kind of tell months in advance to when it went down that the community that I had there was a sinking ship, that the people that were causing the issues had essentially, it was too much for me to continue to ignore it, for my own, like, a lot of these things were things that personally negatively impacted me, but because my friends were still there, it was worth putting up with to just hang out with my friends. And eventually it reached a breaking point, though, where there was someone who worked at that store who had lied to my face, who I considered this person before this a friend. I found out proof that she lied to my face about something and was very dishonest with me. And that was among the last straws. The other last straw was she was very, very rude with some of my friends, with one of my friends in particular, in a way that she'd been similarly rude to me for years, but I had just kind of brushed it aside. But seeing her be very rude to a friend was like, I couldn't put up with it anymore. I couldn't deal with it anymore. And when my friend told me they were not going back there, that was enough for me to be like, I'm also not going back there. There was a lot of other things as well. There was frequent ableist comments that had been made in front of me. There was also, like, I'm trying to remember if that was, yeah, no. They used the R slur one time in front of me as well. That was another thing. There was the fact they sold Harry Potter merch there when they had people that were trans in their store, myself included, like, and, you know, multiple people, even some people that weren't trans, had tactfully kind of asked, like, hey, why do you, sell, like, Harry Potter merch here? You know, are you aware that J.K. Rowling has spent millions of dollars on trying to eradicate trans people from public life, on trying to kill and exterminate trans people? And the manager essentially said, like, oh, well, it sells, so that's why we have it, because, I'm still an ally, but it sells. Here's the thing. It didn't actually sell. The same stuff that was there from, like, a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago was still on the shelves, so it wasn't selling. So it's like, no, it's not selling. You just still have it to sell when it's not selling. So it's like, you can't really be claiming that you're an ally to trans people while you're supporting someone who's literally spent millions of dollars in their wealth to kill trans people. That's literally what this is. So it's one of these places where it makes itself seem like they care about, minorities, but really what they actually care about is minorities' money. They wanted our money. They don't actually care about us as people. It's a fucking lie. And I was willing to put up with that lie for community's sake and for the sake of having other people that I really got along with and other connections I made there. I met other trans people there. I met other disabled people there. I met other witches there that formed long-term connections with me. But the actual management, the actual, structure itself was some fucking bullshit. And I knew for a very long time that it was some fucking bullshit, but I put up with the bullshit to reach the gold. And when there was no more gold left to reach, there was no more reason for me to be there. So I think I'm talking about this because for a long time I haven't really gone into specifics on it. And the last video I made kind of talking about some of it seemed to resonate with a few people, because I had mentioned how, like, I found out recently that, like, customers were going into that store and wondering where I'm at and asking about me, like, where is he at? Like, why isn't he here anymore? And they essentially were just, I guess, regurgitating the information that I'd given, which I lied and said that I stopped going because, well, it wasn't exactly a lie, but it was sort of like, I said that I stopped going because I ended up in the hospital, which is true. I did end up in the hospital, which is when I stopped going. Like, I ended up in the hospital for unrelated reasons to any of this in, like, 2024. I ended up in the hospital for 3 days with a kidney infection that almost took my life. But that wasn't the reason I stopped going there. I just said that, oh, well, you know, I was sick in the hospital, so I stopped doing stuff like that. That's not actually why I stopped going there. That was a reason I stopped doing a lot of things around the same time, but it wasn't the reason I specifically stopped going there. The reason I stopped going there is because the people there, frankly, are not fucking trans allies. They are people that pretend to give a shit about trans people while actively trying to make money off of trans people and not actually caring about the lives or experiences of trans people. And frankly, it's not just trans people that they're bigoted towards, it's also disabled people and black people that they were making feel uncomfortable in their space. They were bigoted, but they were presenting themselves as allies. This is the thing, is it was a place full of fake people. It was fake, essentially. It was great for what it had when it had it, but it doesn't have it anymore. And there was no reason for me to be there as a multiply disabled queer person when I could see that these people are trying to say that they care about, you know, the LGBT community and whatever, when really all they care about is our fucking money. And it was very obvious to me. So it's like, I didn't want to, like, here's the thing, is, like, people like this, they're not actually capable of accountability. They're not actually capable of handling criticism, and they're not actually capable of listening to a no. So I didn't bother telling them to their face, I don't fucking like you anymore. I don't want to be your friend. I don't want anything to do with your business, because it wouldn't do any good. It literally wouldn't do any good to do that. So I didn't do that. I just silently removed myself and said it was because I almost died in the hospital, because it was around the same time period. But that isn't why I stopped going. I stopped going because the people there are fucking bigoted. And that's the fucking truth. And I know that people don't see that, because these people claim to care about all these demographics. They claim to care about disabled people. They claim to care about LGBT people. They claim to care about trans people and disabled people. They're at the fucking local Pride event, you know, having a booth saying that they care about these things. But when it comes down to it, they don't actually care. It's a fucking act. And I was there for years just putting up with the act, because there was stuff that was real. There was people coming in who were fucking real. And it was worth it. But at a certain point, when you're, like, pushing away anything that's real, why the fuck would I be there? You know? And it's like, that's really what it comes down to, is, like, fake allyship and fake care. It was fake. And once the illusion cracked, once I could see that it was fake, there was no reason for me to be there as an occultist or witch anymore. There was no reason for me to contribute to that business as either a customer or someone seeking community there. There was no reason for me to be there anymore. Because here's the thing, is, like, with escalating fascism and things going on, when you're around people who think you should just agree to disagree on human rights, whose idea of caring about minorities is tolerating minorities without actually listening to or respecting the experiences of minorities, that's why a lot of these fucking third spaces are collapsing and falling apart, is because these same people that claim to fucking give a shit oftentimes are just as bigoted and just as, like, nonsensical as the people that are actively fucking harming minorities. And the other part is that these people that claim to give a shit, some of them are backing up and monetarily supporting the people that are actively harming minorities. So it's like, if you claim to give a shit about trans people, but you're selling the merchandise of someone who spent millions of dollars to kill trans people, I'm not gonna fucking want to be at your magic shop. I'm not gonna fucking want to be at your magic shop. Like, that alone is frankly a reason. But the other thing is, like, a lot of black people would go in there and feel uncomfortable. And there was no, like, we'd sometimes have, like, you know, black occultists come into the shop and stuff, but they wouldn't stay. And that's a red flag for me personally. That's a red flag for me as a disabled and trans person, seeing that there's something about that space, something about that store was making black people uncomfortable in there. So it wasn't just making trans people and disabled people uncomfortable who were there. it was also making black people uncomfortable in a way where they would not stay around. And I also noticed like some of the ways that the manager of that store would be like talking to like black customers and stuff was not appropriate. It's like difficult for me to place exactly how, but it's this sort of like I know everything attitude of the manager where they're sort of like, I know everything, and if you're young, I can talk to you like I'm smarter than you, which isn't really going to like, which comes across very like rude. And it's like, should I have just maybe told her to her face that I don't like her, I don't want to be her friend, I don't want anything to do with her business? Maybe, but I fucking didn't, and I'm not going to. I'm not naming the store, and I'm only making this video about it because I've been asked about it multiple times at this point. And I do feel like maybe I need to like say something more specific so that if people ask me, I can maybe just link them to this video. I don't know, but yeah, like that's essentially where I'm at with it. And frankly, like if this offends somebody, I don't really care because they weren't going to this place for years. They haven't been in my shoes, and they're probably not even in my demographics. But what it comes down to is authenticity, and the place stopped being authentic, and there's zero fucking reason for me to be there, and that's that.